we get started with the Saints, and of course, another day of practice today as they continue to get ready for the 2020 season. All systems go at this point, which is good. It's fluid. Check it out day to day, right? Joining us now to talk about that, gentleman that does an excellent job covering the Saints for the New Orleans Advocate, Times-Picayune. He is Luke Johnson. Duke, listen, thanks very much for joining us, and welcome to the show.
Hey, Ken, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Pleasure here, of course. All right, so I guess we'll start with the obvious. Taysom Hill not working today. I got to assume that's probably because his wife's close to giving birth. I would assume that's the reason.
Yeah, Sean Payton talked a little bit about it today. Basically said he didn't want to steal Taysom Hill's thunder, but he with just putting it out there. But he was like, I'll let him say it. But yeah, it's not a big deal. So I think everybody can assume that is imminent. We'll all be watching out for baby Taysom number one and see him back in practice soon, I'm sure.
Since we're talking about guys missing practice, of course, Andrews Pete will get into that in a second. Josh Hill, the other that's interesting, all we got out of Coach was tweak initially, and yet they went out and signed Ethan Wolf. Do you think one correlated to the other, or is it just coincidence?
Well, I'm sure that the signing of Ethan Wolf is related to Josh Hill's quote unquote tweak. But Josh was according to the Pool report today, he was out there doing some stuff on the side. So I wouldn't anticipate he's going to miss any time. But certainly with what they're trying to do, this limited amount of time leading up to the season, they need bodies at tight end, and I think the assumption is that's exactly what Ethan Wolf is. For him, it's a chance to show he can do some stuff. But I'm certain that Josh Hill is going to be back soon, and that's kind of the way it goes. But I think he'll be. I don't think there's any need to worry about Josh Hill missing any time.
With regard to Andrews Pete, it's an interesting case study because a lot of people question the signing at the cost that it incurred to bring him back because of the fact that he's been, a serviceable to solid player, but nothing special despite 2 Pro Bowls. We all know the Pro Bowl doesn't mean anywhere near what it used to mean. And we all know he's been willing to play hurt. The problem is he's been hurt a lot of different nagging injuries. And when he's played hurt, he hasn't been as effective as we've seen. Now he's got the thumb. Now we're not sure about whether he's ready for the opening gun on the 13th of September. If not, it's Nick Easton. What do we make of this situation with Andrews Pete?
Yeah, I think there's some to question whether he was worth a 5-year, $57.5 million contract it's valid. I think that surprised a lot of people, not just the fans, but a few of us in the media corps. But yeah, I think you can also point at Andrews Pete, and while he may not be spectacular, you don't really need him to be, and he can also give you some really super valuable flexibility there as somebody who can play both guard and tackle. I just don't think you're going to find that very often. But you are also banking on him playing a full 16-game season or something close to it. And the fact of the matter is he hasn't done that yet, which is why I think you can look at him breaking his thumb early on in training camp and say, that's just kind of another kind of check in the negative box that people are going to keep pointing to with him. I don't think it's going to be something that's going to require him to miss more than the opener. I think if he misses any time, that'll be it. But at the same time, missing a couple of weeks of training camp when you have extremely limited off season in terms of where you can train and how you can train, no actual football work with the team, it's going to add up. And even if he is healthy, I imagine he's not going to be at close to what Andrews Pete is at 100% when he suits up. So yeah, it's absolutely a concern. I don't know if this is going to be a result, or this is going to be a situation where we see Nick Easton starting in week 1. But I don't know if the Andrews Pete that we're going to see out there is going to be peak Andrews Pete. I think that's absolutely a fair thing to say.
When we last saw the New Orleans Saints against the Vikings, the interior of the offensive line was a concern and didn't perform up to standards in that game. And now you're faced with a Pete with an injured thumb. You're faced with a second-year player at center in Eric McCoy and a rookie in Cesar Ruiz being those inside guys to start this season. First off, it certainly appears it will be McCoy at center, Ruiz at right guard. Secondly, is this now become the biggest concern on an otherwise really good roster?
I mean, I think you could say it's the biggest concern, but I don't think that means it's a big concern, if that makes any sense. I think their line is going to be pretty solid. I've a lot of faith in their college scouting department. I've heard nothing but very good things about Cesar Ruiz. And I think Eric McCoy played a really, really good rookie season last year. And when they struggled in that Minnesota game, I remember looking back at it after Larry Warford got cut because, I remember Daniil Hunter and Everson Griffin wreaking a lot of havoc inside as they kind of played around with where they moved their defensive end. But they also beat Teron Armstead and Brian Ramczyk pretty handily in that game. I think they just outplayed it. And I think it'd be a mistake to overlook what was from the rest of the four starters outside of Larry Warford, mostly solid 2019 season. I think they'll be fine on the offensive line and very good on the offensive line. But when you're looking at this 2020 Saints roster, I think front to back, side to side, they're deep everywhere and talented everywhere. And I think you could say that might be one of their top concerns, but I don't think it's much of one.
Luke Johnson with us from the New Orleans Advocate. Ty Montgomery's made a splash early in camp. Dwayne Washington's been a solid runner when given the chance and a special teams guy. Is there any chance they keep 4 running backs? And if they only keep 3, is it Montgomery over Washington?
Shoot, man, I've been thinking about this and trying to wrap my head around it. I'm not really sure. And yeah, every year it seems I like take a crack at picking who they're going to keep out of that running back core, because they've had some guys that have been pretty impressive in the preseason. Guys like Jonathan Williams and Boston Scott and all that, and then both those guys end up getting cut after 1 week or less. I don't know. It's really tough. I think Dwayne Washington has been really impressive when he's gotten his chance, and he has played a core special teams role, which I think is going to be important this year. It's going to be hard to identify which of those guys can go out there and contribute on those lines when you don't have the preseason games to use as evaluation. I think the preseason games are maybe most important for the special teams evaluations. So I think Washington has an inside track, but we keep hearing nothing but good things about Ty Montgomery. And he's the type of player who Sean Payton likes to keep around because he's versatile and he can do a lot of different things. And he's kind of like a shiny toy in the toy box. So the only question I have is who are you going to take touches away from to give to Ty Montgomery? You're talking about like probably minimum 180 targets for Michael Thomas. You're probably talking about close to 100 targets for both Jared Cook and Emmanuel Sanders. You're probably talking about 120 targets for Alvin Kamara out of the backfield, and then you're talking about the touches for Kamara and Latavius Murray as runners. I don't know where Ty Montgomery fits into that equation. So even though like he makes a ton of sense in the Saints offense, I don't know if you keep 4 running backs, and I don't know if you play up the possibilities with Ty Montgomery over what you know you're going to get in Dwayne Washington, which is a quality special teams player outside of somebody who can also do well when he's given the opportunity to run the ball.
And there's a similar dynamic in place for Tommy Stevens because how does he fit? I mean, you've got 3 tight ends that are going to be on this roster with Jared Cook, Josh Hill, and Adam Troutman. And then you've got Taysom Hill who can line up in the slot or even a tight end if necessary. So how can Stevens possibly find a spot on this roster?
Yeah, Ken, I hate to say it, I just don't see it happening. Yeah, he's been put in a really, really tough spot. I think he's coming in right now, and he's in a professional training camp playing a position that he's never played before in his life. And we were talking to Dan Campbell, the tight ends coach, the other day, and he's like, it's like taking a kid out of high school and bringing him onto a college roster and teach him how to play a position. And I keep thinking about that. It sounds more like you're bringing a kid out of Pee Wee football and you're putting him on a high school roster and teach him how to play a position. It's just he's in a really tough spot. Beyond the fact that they are definitely going to keep Troutman and Cook and Josh Hill, those guys aren't going anywhere, and he's just learning how to block a 300-pound defensive end. I think the best case scenario for him is to hopefully make the Saints practice squad, but somebody might see him as a potential Taysom Hill type of player, if not even Taysom Hill. If not a guy who's going to be like a developmental quarterback who can play other positions, just at least somebody who can just do a lot of things. So his future might not be in New Orleans because I don't think he makes the active roster, and then they're going to have to try to sneak him onto the practice squad. I don't know if that happens either. But
you can rest assured Joe Brady will have something to say about that.
Yeah. I mean, that was the big story after the draft, right? They were fighting the Panthers for him, so we'll see. I just think it's going to be very hard for them to make a reason to keep him on a 53-man roster.
Wide receiver is another interesting dynamic. We know Thomas and Sanders are there. We know Dante Harris is there because of his return game ability and his speed on the outside. You would imagine Traquan Smith is going to be there as well, which might leave one spot for a whole bunch of dudes. Fowler, who's come in, obviously. Carr, who's been there. Will Jordan Humphrey, Emmanuel Butler. I mean, it's quite a list of players. Jawan Johnson, who could be a hybrid guy. And yet there's probably only one spot available there. Again, I think it just speaks to the roster depth of this team. In another year, maybe 2 or 3 of those guys would definitely stick. This year, it doesn't look like that will happen.
Yeah, it's absolutely the case, I think. I don't think you can make a case for them. Yeah, obviously, Michael Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders are going to be here. Obviously, Deontay Harris is going to be here. And I think you could probably throw Traquan Smith in the obvious category, too. I can't see a scenario where they're getting rid of any of those 4 guys. So, yeah, maybe they keep 6 receivers this year because they like some of these guys. But, the likelihood is more that they're going to keep 5, and that's a lot of guys to choose from, I think. We get some flack from the fan base sometimes for hyping these guys up, but they look really good in practice. I think Emmanuel Butler consistently shows out in practice, and he's been doing it for a couple years now. And even during the season when they're doing their walkthroughs on Fridays, he's been given an opportunity to step in and do some of those reps with guys. I think they really like him. I think it's pretty clear they like Will Jordan Humphrey as well, and I think it's clear to a lot of people in the Saints fan base that there's something in Austin Carr that they like. They've kept them around for 3 years now, so it's going to be a tough decision, and it's all going to come down to what else you can do as the number 5 receiver, and I think it's going to be interesting finding out what that is.
Defensively, a lot of places to go, but of course, linebacker, we know Demario Davis is there. They will play a lot of 2 linebacker sets. Anzalone's running with the first team right now, by all accounts, apparently healthy. Cross your fingers on that. They brought in, of course, Nigel Bradham from Philadelphia, who's got skins on the wall and is capable of playing. And they've got Zach Bond, who could step in to that situation, too. We know Craig Robertson is a veteran player. Caden Ellis is a guy that has some promise. How do you see the linebacker spot?
Shoot, it's another spot where I think you could point to it as, like, right now is like their weak spot on the defense, and that really says something about how talented their defense is. I really like Alex Anzalone as a player. I hope he can stay healthy. I really I really do, just for a 16-game season, because he's been dealing with this stuff ever since college. And everything we've heard about him so far is that he's as good as he's ever looked. He's as healthy as he's ever been, and he's primed for a big year. He's just got to prove it. That's all it comes down to now, because he hasn't been able to do that yet. And I think if he does, that'll allow the Saints to develop a guy like Zach Bond, who needs to learn some of the finer points of the position after really playing kind of as an edge rusher with Wisconsin last year. It'll allow him to bring Nigel Bradham into the mix slowly, since he signed with the team really only like 3 weeks ago. It'll allow them to see what they have, and guys like Caden Ellis or this undrafted rookie Joe Bocci, who linebackers coach Michael Hodges spoke really highly of the other day. And I think Craig Robertson definitely has a spot on this team. I think I can comfortably say that, just as from a veteran leadership standpoint, he's really valuable. From a special team standpoint, he's really valuable. But they need to make sure they're not in a position like they were in last year, where all these linebackers got hurt, and Craig Robertson was kind of their last line of defense there, and he had to play a lot of linebacker on the field. It's not what you want, because he's out of that whole group, he's probably fifth or sixth on the list there. So it's important that you find the right guys right now, and especially for Anzalone's sake, keep him healthy throughout the year.
Didn't even mention Kiko Alonso, but he's hurt right now, and he played well.
Yeah, he's on the PUP list, but I think he'll, obviously, when he's come back from this exact injury before, and he's been a very, very good player afterwards, and I think he was really hitting his stride last year. If he comes back and he's healthy this year, I mean, honestly, that linebacker core is really, really good, no matter who they get.
All indications are they'll be better in the secondary, because they've got Janoris Jenkins for a full season, and with all due respect, he's a better cover corner than Eli Apple. You've got Chauncey Gardner-Johnson entering his second year with a lot of promise. You've got P.J. Williams, who's found his niche. Of course, you've got Marcus Williams, who is a hit-and-miss proposition. When he's on, he's really on. Tackling is a real issue. And then you bring in Malcolm Jenkins to provide leadership and guidance for that group. And I didn't even mention Patrick Robinson. It's a deep bunch in the secondary. It certainly looks like it's a better overall secondary than a year ago.
Yeah, I think so. I think the addition of Janoris Jenkins is really a big upgrade over Eli Apple. Yeah, Eli, I think, got off to a pretty strong start with the Saints, but once teams kind of got the book on him, they definitely picked on him, and sometimes with a high degree of success. I don't think they're going to be able to do that with Janoris Jenkins. I think if you're looking at just cover corner tandems, Saints have to be up at the upper echelon of the NFL right now. Marcus Williams, like you said, he's had his issues with tackling, and last year especially. People might want to bring up the Minnesota Miracle, because it's super memorable and relevant, but the image that comes to my mind is last year when he's getting taken for a ride by George Kittle for 15 yards. He's added weight this offseason. He's made it an emphasis of his offseason. We've obviously yet to see it. They haven't been doing live tackling in practice. We have to see it in games. So that's kind of got to be I'll believe it when I see it sort of thing.
Sure.
Really intrigued. Really, go ahead, Ken. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say the same game, the San Francisco game, the Kittle ride certainly was the most noticeable one. But earlier in the game, he's single high free safety, and not only allows Emmanuel Sanders to catch a deep ball, but he falls down, doesn't make a tackle, and Sanders runs for a touchdown. So, it's been as pivotal a game as there was. Yeah.
It's absolutely been a totally fair critique of this game, and I think he understands that. Yeah, I think maybe in the past he would have pushed against it, and just called everybody a bunch of haters or whatever for calling out the problem he had in this game. But I think just from speaking with him and from speaking with his coaches, it sounds like he's matured and he's accepted that as something he needs to improve. So we just need to see it actually in action. But I mean, you roll through the rest of the secondary. Malcolm Jenkins, and beyond being a really good leader, has just kept up his level of play. And maybe it's only for another year or two. I don't know how good he's going to be at the end of his 4-year deal, but I think he's still a pretty high level safety right now. Marshawn Lattimore, if he can improve, year 4, I think it's possible he can still improve, and I think he could be one of the top cover corners in the NFL. I think P.J. Williams has been underrated in the nickels. Like I said, I think you're looking at like linebacker as being probably the worst spot on their defense. And linebacker is pretty strong. I think I'd put the secondary ahead of the linebacker group. So they're looking pretty strong there.
No doubt. And then finally, the two guys that are the most important players to me would be the two massive investments up front, Sheldon Rankins and Marcus Davenport. So much invested in these players. We've seen Rankins, when healthy, can be very good. We've seen flashes from Davenport. Injuries have curtailed both. It's time to put up for both of these guys, and that means staying on the field.
Yeah, it does. I think for Davenport especially, just because he's only played 13 games a year since he's gotten into the NFL. And I think we keep talking about his potential to be something really, really great. But in order to hit that, in order to really see that through, he's got to stay on the field. Hands down, 100%. I think the Sheldon Rankins thing, he's already shown he can do it. It's just a matter of, he's got to rebound from two really unfortunate ends to his season. In 2018, he was honestly one of the best defensive tackles in football, one of the most disruptive. And, last year he was working his way back. He was finally starting to find his stride, and then got derailed again. So the early reports on him are that he's looking explosive and powerful, which is what you want to hear. The early reports on Davenport is that he appears motivated. He's put on a bunch of weight, like a good weight, and he's looking explosive and powerful. And if you can add those guys to a line that already includes Onyemata and Cam Jordan, and I thought Malcolm Brown played pretty well last year. Shy Tuttle was really impressive as a first-year undrafted free agent. That offensive and defensive lines, I think, are where the Saints win games this year, in my opinion.
Yep, and Trey Hendrickson in that mix, too. Good player. You can follow him on Twitter by Luke Johnson. Of course, read the New Orleans Advocate. Times-Picayune does a great job there, and he'll do that covering the Saints all season long. Luke, thank you so much for the time. Keep up the good work. Stay safe. We'll talk soon.
Sounds great, Ken. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. It's Luke Johnson.